Hello, so I'm going to do a second video on factorising quadratic expressions. This one is where the coefficient of the x squared, i.e. the number before the x squared, is not a 1. Everything we did in the last example, three of the examples we did in the last one, there was an invisible kind of 1 in front of those, in front of the squared term. However, that won't always be the case, and these are the more tricky questions that you need to watch out for. So I've got 3 examples to go through today. This is the first one. So this is quite similar to example 4 in the last video, in the first video on factorising quadratics. So when the number before the squared term is not 1, there's an extra few steps that you need to do. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at the number before the coefficient of the squared term and then just the number bit on its own. As always, include the sign that comes before it and think of this one as a positive 4. So we're going to multiply these two terms together. 3 times 4 is positive 12. So then we're going to find the factors of positive 12. So we could have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. Now, as before, we want the ones that sum to positive 7. So if I add each of these numbers together, 1 and 12 is 13, 2 and 6 is 8, 3 and 4 is 7. So that tells me the ones I'm going to be interested in are these two here. Now that doesn't give us our final answer yet, it doesn't give us our brackets. What we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this whole expression, 3g squared plus 7g plus 4, but instead of 7g, I'm going to break it down so that it's plus 3 and plus 4, lots of g. So 3g squared plus 3g plus 4g and then plus 4. It doesn't matter which way around you put this. You could put plus 4g plus 3g. It really doesn't matter because when you come to factorise it in a second, that will take account of that. So we're now going to, just the same as I did in the last video, just factorise this left-hand side. So I'm only looking for the time being at these two things here, 3g squared and 3g. The highest common factor of both of those is 3g. So that goes outside the bracket. And then inside the bracket, 3g times g would give me 3g squared. And then 3g times positive 1 would give me 3g. Now I'm going to do the same with this side. I'll do this bit in blue. So looking at positive 4g and positive 4, the highest common factor of both of those terms is positive 4. So I'm going to write plus 4. And then I say, to get from 4 to 4g, I need to multiply 4 by g. Now to get from 4 to positive 4, that becomes a positive 1. You'll notice, as I said in the last video, that the two brackets here are the same. So one of your brackets becomes 3g plus 4. And the other bracket becomes g plus 1. That's your answer. You can always expand those two brackets to see if you've got back the answer of this, expand and simplify. But yeah, that's the answer for that one. Let's do another one. This time we should notice that the number before the square term is not a 1 again, so that means I need to multiply it by, remember to include the sign that comes before it, the negative 3. So I'm going to do 5 multiplied by 3, and I'm now going to find the factors of negative 15. So I'm going to worry about the negative in a second. I'm just going to do the factors of 15, 1 and 15, 3 and 5. Now, if I am multiplying two numbers together and I get an answer that is negative, that means less than 0, one of those two numbers needs to be negative. So I could either have negative 1 and 15, negative 3 and 5, or if I write out my factors again, the negative could be in front of the other number. So now I want the sum of each of those pairs of numbers. So negative 1 plus 15 would give me a positive 14. Negative 3 plus 5 would give me a positive 2. 1 plus negative 15, when you have two signs next to each other and they're different, that becomes a takeaway. So 1 take away 15 gives me minus 14. Same here, that becomes a minus 2. So the ones I'm going to be using are negative 3 and positive 5. So I'm going to rewrite my question again. 5w squared, take away 3w, add 5w, and take away 3. So put my line in. Looking at 5w squared and 3w, the highest common factor there is w. W times 5w would give me 5w squared. W times negative 3 would give me negative 3w. Now we're going to do the same on the right hand side. Looking at both of these terms, plus 5w and negative 3, the highest common factor there is just positive 1. So inside my bracket, 1 times 5w gives me 5w, or positive 5w. 1 times negative 3 would give me, if I expanded that, that would give me negative 3. Again, this is a good indicator that you've got it right. Those two brackets are the same. So now one of my brackets becomes that w plus 1, and the second bracket becomes 5w minus 3. Again, it doesn't matter, you could have written 5w minus 3 as your first bracket and w plus 1 as your second bracket. That's both are equally correct. Okay, final example. So once again, the number before the w is, sorry, the y in this case is not 1. So I need to look at these two numbers here. Multiplying these two together means that I'm now finding my factors of positive 30. So I could have 1 and 30. I could have 2 and 15, 3 and 10, or 5 and 6. But I want them to add to give me negative 11. They need to have a sum of negative 11. So this is where you must remember that to get a positive number, when I multiply two numbers together, either both numbers could be positive numbers, or both numbers could be negative numbers. So same factors, and 5 and 6, but both of those factors would give me a positive. If they were both negative, my answer when I multiplied them together, when I multiplied them together, would be a positive. So as before, just working out my sum. These are all positive numbers. And these ones, when I added them together, again, when I add a negative, that becomes a takeaway. So negative 1 take away 30 gives me negative 31, negative 17, negative 13, and negative 11. So the ones I'm interested in are these ones here. So now I'm just going to rewrite the original question. 5y squared minus 5y minus 6y and plus 6. So factorising the left hand side, the highest common factor of 5y squared and negative 5y becomes 5y, and I would have to multiply that by y minus 1 to get me negative 5y when I expanded it. So that's the left hand side done. We'll now do the right hand side. Negative 6y and positive 6. If we took the factor of negative 6 outside the bracket, inside the bracket, to get negative 6y, I would just need to multiply by y. Negative 6 times 1, a positive 1, would give me negative 6. I don't want negative 6, I want positive 6. So this would also have to be a minus, because then if I were to expand this, negative 6 times negative 1 would give me that positive 6 that I'm looking for. two brackets are exactly the same, so my final answer is 5y minus 6 in one bracket, and in the other bracket y minus 1. Again, you could check by expanding. That's your final answer. Okay, so I've made another question generator. There were only 3 examples here, so you can get increasingly difficult questions. You can get 4 of one type of question, or you can get a mixture of all the questions when you're feeling really confident. I'll stick a link to that in the description of the video. You will also need to click enable content when you open this file, otherwise the buttons won't work. Enable content appears in a little yellow ribbon at the top. But that's it. Thanks very much for watching. I hope it's useful. Bye bye.